Hey, what's going on, everyone, and welcome to the Deceptor Lab. And this is your boy Freeze today with a new video, and we're going to talk about combat bots. And so, what I've done is I've taken my top 10 picks of combat bots in the game currently, right now in 2022, and I'm going to rate them from number 10 all the way up to number 1, who I think is the best. So, these are ones that I actually use quite heavily. And honestly, I expect this video to be a little bit controversial. You know, everybody has different opinions on bots, and but this is one of those videos that was a request from one of my viewers to do a ranking for combat bots. So here we are. And so before we get into any of that, I want to show you the criteria that I'm using. And so that's what we got up here. So this is not an all-inclusive list, but it's going, these are many of the driving factors that I'm looking at. So I wrote up there that damage is going to be pretty high up there, and to include, because all of these bots don't always do damage. So if it's got good healing, if it's got anything special that is really effective at doing, if it blocks damage or anything like that really well, then I added that to that category as well. I also take into consideration if it's countered, if it's easily countered, then it kind of makes me a little bit leery about some of the combat bots. If you guys have been watching me for a little while, you know a lot of times when I start talking about fire, that's one of those things I kind of steer away from just because there's so many different counters to it. I also look at team chemistry. And so when I say team chemistry, one of the primary things that I'm looking at is whether or not a bot affects one bot, if it affects many bots, if the whole team gets better as the result of having this combat bot on your team. Then that's one of the things I consider honestly pretty strongly. Survivability, for especially for the minion type, survivability becomes an issue. Am I going to have the bot for a little while? Is it going to last the entire battle? That's one of those things that comes into play. And the other thing that I started thinking about is how well does a bot equip to? Does it equip to one bot class? Does it equip to multiple bot classes? How versatile is the bot in terms of equipping the bot? And so that's most of the criteria I use. There will be a couple other things that come up here and there. We'll talk about them as we go. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. And we will start with my number 10 pick, and that is going to be Glit. Now, right now, I'm going to go into my test server account, and I've actually got Glit on. I got it added today, and so we'll get a little bit of gameplay going here in a minute. But let's talk about some of the. Honestly, number 10 is the toughest choice for me, just because there's a lot of honorable mentions that I would have put up there, and I don't want to say any names right now because I don't want to give away the rest of my list. But yeah, man, it was a tough pick. But one thing that I really love about Glit is going to give you a pretty decent amount of healing. So let me actually go pull Glit up on my game screen real quick, and I got the 5-star. I just maxed it out on my test server so we can look at some stats real quick. And let's see. Alright, so we are going to take a look at Glit. And let's see. I'm going to put. And we'll flip over to the game screen. And right now I'm equipping Glit. And lots of different ways you can use Glit. I'm going to actually put mine's on. I'm going to replace my 3-star and put it on Fellbat. And we'll see how it goes in gameplay. But one of the things I want to look at is I want to look at the stats. And for this maxed out 5-star, you know, I'm talking about doing 171 healing per second, which is pretty huge. And I want to show you for comparison's sake what I try to compare that to. So I'm going to look at, actually, let me look at bots real quick. So I'm going to look at my 5-star reflector. So that 5-star reflector level 63 is doing 220.4 healing per second. Glit's doing 170. So I mean 50 points difference. I mean for a combat bot, that's not bad. So that's what I primarily look at. You know, this is a combat that's equipable to most bot classes. It's got pretty good health at at the higher levels, and it and I marked it as a positive. But one of the things that I was looking at is that it sticks to one bot. And so that can be good because you're focusing, you're concentrating that healing on your bot that really needs it to stay alive. But at the same time, if that bot dies, then it'll start healing other bots. So that makes it, honestly, makes it pretty usable. It's usable on defense, so that's a good thing. And one of the things that I didn't mention on my list of criteria is I like bots that I'm able to use in multiple different war modes. I mean, multiple different game modes, excuse me, to include war, to include raid, to just have that overall utility that makes a bot really good and usable in any situation. I consider this to be one of those bots that is usable in most common situations. So, right here, and I actually got one of the other content creators, Grind Time. Not going to try to make too hard of an attempt up here. Just want to make sure that I highlight Glit. And so I just want to take a look at how he continues to throw some health up here on Fellbat. And to aid in that, I'll throw down the stun. And then even if I use a healer for backup there, you know, oops. Yeah, if I use a healer for backup there, you know, he's holding on pretty tight. I mean, he's under a decent amount of fire. And so now you just have multiple healing sources there, which really makes, and now you can see between having a Hook, one of the better healers in the game, and Glit, you know, this guy's, he held up pretty well, considering I just had him up there solo. So, as far as negatives, I don't really have a lot of negatives for him, other than the fact that I wouldn't mind him going to multiple bots, but that's one of those things that when I look at it, then yeah, you know, it depends on your play style really. But yeah, I mean, I like having that additional healing boost, and I think that it's great for your bot survivability in wars. So that's my number 10 pick. Alright, so moving on, we're gonna move on to number 9, which is gonna be Fangtron. And so for Fangtron, this is exactly what I envision when I think about a warrior class combat. And I was talking to some of the playtesters the other day, and one of the big issues that I see with warrior class combats is the problem that they keep wanting to increase their attack power, and the attack power is cool, but that's not their primary function. And I want the primary function of a warrior is to protect the rest of that team. So when I look at like a warrior class combat like Fangtron, I feel like he really does his job well in that regard, and just protecting that team, you know. And so let's look at some of the while I get him set up here. Let's look at some of his positives. And so I love that he adds those holograms. Adding holograms to me is of high value, just because it saves on some ability points, man. If you're using Blot, if you're using Dinobot 2, if you're using any of these guys, then especially like Nightbird, who also has that stun ability. That's one of the things that Fangtron does. He has that stun ability as well. And so Nightbird is also you can get that, basically that same ability using her ability and Fangtron's, and so it winds up giving you a decent amount of protection. This is one of the ones that one of the negatives I was looking at is that Fangtron doesn't do, like, I don't see like anything where he's doing like any damage. As far as counters, there is a slight stun counter which you can have through the build bots. So if you're using them for just to try to get the stun, then that's not going to be of as much value for that purpose, but it's still going to block that damage, and so then it becomes very usable in wars. You can use it as an additional outpost popper, so that's one less ability use that you got to use, and like I said, it conserves ability points. So and so I don't have Fangtron on my test account, but I do have it on my live account. So let me get that pulled up. Yeah, I got a 4-star a couple of events ago, and so that made it pretty good. And I've only got him up there at level 1. I still need to go get more resources right now, but let's go ahead and go to the game screen real quick. So I got him at level 1, and even at level 1 on a 4-star, you know, every 15 seconds you're getting this hollow, and you know, you're attaching them to a bot that's really good. So I got mine attached to block, and I've actually made some pretty good hollow walk teams based off of this. And so we'll just go ahead and take a look at Fangtron, you know, which we got the Autobot equivalents children. I think they're really good combat bots. And so one of the things, I'll try to drop them down here on the bottom because I got a couple of outpost bots down there, but in this particular case, he got just outside of that area for the outpost. But in a lot of cases, he will pop the outpost. And so in this case, he actually got through the wall, and then he pops that outpost, and it's going to keep anybody else around from taking damage. Like you can see right there, Windblade goes in there and attacks Fangtron instead of attacking block. And so that's one of the primary reasons why I like using Fangtron on my teams. Alright, so that's my number 9. We're going to move on, and this is probably going to be another controversial one. I remember when this one first came out, it was controversial at the time. I even when I made my video about it. But number 8 for me is going to be Singe. And the reason for that is actually pretty simple. Singe, I feel like, has very high attack power. He's a wall buster, so that makes it good in those situations that you have walls. Now, he bumped lower down on my list. I actually like him probably a little bit more than number 8, but the meta is changing. If you guys have ever heard me talk about Singe, the meta has changed over the years where we're not trying to fight walls, we're trying to shoot over walls primarily. And so that's one of the negatives, and the other negative for him is that he's air class only, and so the usability in terms of equipping the different bots, it just isn't always there. So there's really only 2 bots that I really like using Singe on. One of those, if you ever saw my video on Singe, was Cutthroat. And to make an example, what I did with Cutthroat is I put Cutthroat on a team, and well, actually I soloed him first. I put Cutthroat and paired it up with Singe, and also used the Quintus Prime Core, and the damage was just unreal. He was just soloing like zone 13, I believe he soloed zone 14, and I was just like, man, this combat is honestly, it's really good. And so the other bot that I use it on, and I'm about to pull it up right now on my live account, the other bot that I use is, and I'll bring it to the game screen, the other bot that I use is Thrust. And if anybody's seen me talk about this, I think I might have talked about it in my Thrust video, or I know I've talked about it to just different players before. One of the reasons why I use Singe on Thrust is because a lot of people, especially when the 5-star version of Thrust came out, they hated the fact that Thrust goes forward in combat. And so what I did to offset that, and well, the reason why they get upset about him going forward in combat is because he can kind of get himself into a little bit of trouble. So what I do is I'll take Singe and I'll use that healing ability, which is the reason why I really like him. And right now I got him 4-star level 6, and that beam is going to heal you for 55% of damage every 5 seconds. So what I actually like to do, and I'm actually going to go back to that exact same team that I was running. Excuse me. And one of the ways that I like to run Singe with Thrust is to target defenses. So I actually put him on the team with like Beast Wars, Megatron, so that I can target defenses, and then I can just walk a little bit easier. Now this is one of those things that if I had the bots for it, I'd use it. I'd be more likely to use it in Prime League. I have thought about it. I mean, shoot, I use Cutthroat in Prime League. Right now, I'm not in a position to try to use him on my war team. However, when that opportunity does present itself, because I had to move some cores around to be competitive in Prime League, then that's one of the things that I'm willing to do. But I actually like that I can take him and go forward with thrust, and then when he comes back down to the ground, he'll just start healing himself. And so I want to take a look at thrust over here, and he's getting some good quick shots in damage wise, and you can see even with this 4-star level 6, his health is up there pretty high, and that's one of the concerns that we have for thrust. It's not one of the concerns that we have for Cutthroat. With Cutthroat, he's already got high health and he's already got high damage, so it makes him even more usable on him. And so that's why I got Singe as my number 8 pick. Alright, so moving on, we're gonna go look at the next bot in the batch, and the next bot for me is gonna be SG Ravage. And the reason why I like to use SG Ravage was a lot of reasons why I really love this combat. And so I'll start off. He's got pretty decent damage. He also has that smoke, and I love this because this gives you an additional way to shoot over walls. If you're in a situation when you need to shoot over walls, he works well with most teams. He works well in raid. He works well in war. He's got he was, like I said, he's designed by play testers. We were given the opportunity to develop a bot, and this is what I believe at the time it was Texas Titan that came up with the concept, and it was a really good concept. I love it. For me, I'm a Cutthroat fan, as I mentioned already 3 times in this video. This guy really helps to try to conserve some of those Cutthroat ability uses with this smoke. And so that's why I got him up there in the number 7 spot. And what I'm doing now is I'm setting him up on my modified version of my war team. But one of the things that I like doing with SG Ravage is just sitting him back here. I actually got him sitting back on my healers right now in order to, and actually let me go switch to the game screen, and I'm actually going to switch him over to my 5-star reflector, and I'm going to let him do his thing. This is exactly how I have him set up on my actual war team, by the way. So some of the negatives while I'm waiting on the screen to load is his pathing. He can be a little erratic at times, and so that makes me nervous, because if he had, when we were talking about Glit and we were saying how Glit will continue to just follow along, then that's a completely different issue. Just because it'll stick to one bot. Since he doesn't use a beam, he can't stick to one bot. But let's take a close look, and I'm not going to fight my way all the way through this base. I'm going to test the count again. But you can see that he's shooting those rockets periodically, and you can see that he's putting down that smoke, helping protect, my impactor down there. And I don't have a power core on my impactor, so he's still losing a little bit of health there. But that smoke did kind of help him out a little bit. So that's one of the things that I really enjoy about SG Ravage. But yeah, if he had a beam, that would be perfect, because for protection that would have been perfect. Like maybe if they made him with a little shield or something like that. But with the smoke, and then the other thing I forgot to mention about the smoke doesn't really get affected by the FFD. So that would have been one of the negatives, and that would have made him a little bit less desirable. But as they have him built, He's a pretty good bot. And so yeah, I actually really like SG Ravage a lot, and I feel comfortable with him in my number 7 spot. All right, so moving on to number 6, we're gonna go with Tunbot, and so I'm gonna get him switched over. I'm actually gonna use him on Reflector too, and I'll tell you why here in a moment, because I got something I want to show you guys. But Tunbot is really good because one of the things that I've actually I got a request a couple of weeks ago to test out Tunbot. So I asked for a 5-star on the test account. I got him, and what I found was that Tunbot can actually solo a lot of bases by himself. So one of the things that I did to demonstrate how good it was that I actually used Tunbot. And I just put him on a healer because I knew a healer wasn't going to have a lot of attack power. So I wanted that to kind of reflect like, hey, this dude is doing this by himself. And so I'm just going to let that run in the background while I talk to you about all the different reasons that I really like Tunbot. And so I put him up here on Reflector. I'm just going to let him kind of run in the background. Alright, so when we're talking about Tunbot, he's kind of tough to target just because he flies. So not all of these, not everything on defensively is going to be able to target something that's in the air. And he's got pretty decent damage. I like his smite ability. I like slow down and I like speed up. If you guys have been watching me for a little while, you guys already know that. Let's see. And a lot of times when I run him in a full team, he's usually the last bot to survive. And it's been a couple of times where he was still hanging around. He attacked the HQ, and that's what allowed me to complete a war attempt. So he's definitely very durable. Survivability is great. He can be a little bit slow at times, I feel like. You're not able to control them too much, and sometimes there are other options that I have out there that I like using. In some cases, a little bit more. So I'm not going to use them necessarily in every situation. But one really positive here is he's fantastic on defense. He can be a nice little distraction. He can put up a little bit of damage, and he's just really good, man. And like as you're looking up here in the background, you can see that, hey, Reflector's gone, and with a little bit of help from the Titan here in Zone 13, this dude pretty much he almost took that entire base by himself. That's so impressive to me that a combat bot can solo Zone 13, which is a zone that I commonly use in events. So when you combine all that together, Tunbot is definitely worthy of being in my number 6 spot. Alright, so now we're getting into the top 5. We're getting into the fun stuff. And so for my number 5 pick is going to be Vertebrae. And you guys probably already seen me talk about Vertebrae plenty of times. And particularly when I go use sack strategy, when I go run a sack, I always like to have one bot that I just can't afford for him to get stunned because he's soaking up all the damage. So I'm going to go back to my war team and I'm going to show you guys how I typically use I actually did have an Amalgamous on that one. Alright, so when I go make a sack attempt, and I'm actually thinking about running a video on how I run sacks, but so this is pretty much what I use on my war team regularly. And I like Vertebrae because for a couple of reasons. So if I go use Ramjet in this situation if I go use Ramjet for a sack, which I'm going to do right here, I'm going to take myself out of the screen for a second. If I use Ramjet on a sack and I get multiple bots to come down. And I'm just going to kind of halfway do it for a second. And he vectors back. Those bots walk down to the bottom of the screen. And what it does here is it allows me to use, after he dies the second time, and vertebrate comes out, then I'm actually able to, and this is actually a perfect scenario because Chromie is coming down. And when you look at it, it's a huge crowd up there. Chromius towers down there. I've got a bunch of little sharks down there, and he just shreds all of them up with the assistance of vertebrate. Like, just completely takes care of the problem. And that's a big deal for me because normally what I would do is I will drop the rest of the team in there behind Impactor. Before that, I used to use vertebrate on Sentius Malice, and it just really takes care of a lot of the problems just because it's using 100% of his damage and using that damage every 3 seconds to whatever's attacking Impactor in that case. You're also not getting stunned, you're not getting hacked, there's not any counter for it, and there's a wide range of bots that you can equip it to. So it works well on any team, it works well for wars, it works well for raids. There's not too many situations where I say, oh man, you know what, I should just leave vertebrate there. Like, I put Impactor on my team just so I can use vertebrate. Now, from a walking speed standpoint, going into some of the negatives, vertebrate can be a little bit slow. And when that happens, when that walk speed is slow, it breaks contact, and you probably saw it. Well, no, I don't think you saw it on that particular attempt, but it also takes about 3 seconds for vertebrate to get out onto the battlefield, so you can get stunned during that time period. And I've had reports from many players that say, hey man, I've got the aura up here and it's bugged or something because I'm still getting stunned. That does happen from time to time. My particular team setup, my team is kind of slow a little bit on the attack side, so it's not really a problem for me, but I understand why it's a problem for other players. In addition to that, a lot of players have reports about, you know, the survivability not really being that great with vertebrate, but I haven't had that problem much either, considering that I run double healers. So easily, vertebrate is my number 5 pick. All right, so moving on to number 4. And this one's probably going to be controversial, but I actually have Fireline at number 4. And so when we go back, and I'm actually going to go back to my criteria slide for a second, just so everyone can see what it is I'm seeing. And when I ran that criteria slide, you know, damage, obviously Fireline's damage is incredible. Here's the big problem. The big problem for me is the counters that are available when you are using Fireline. So, I mean, obviously everything else is great. It works great on any team. It's got AoE, it damages multiple stuff, but those counters you got, and when you look at your Titan has a method for getting rid of lowering fire attacks, and that's a problem for me because there have been certain war effects where they lower fire effects, and then you got to go scramble to go use another bot. And the reason why it's a problem for me is because combat spark is so it's rare. Like, you gotta use a lot of it to get your combats maxed out. And so if I max out like a Fireline or something like that, it becomes tough. It becomes tough to replace. It's like, yeah, I could just go run Crater Maker, I could do something like that, but yeah, it's just, it can become not as effective. But it is one of those abilities that makes the entire team better. It can save you ability points, and in some cases, depending on if you're using other bots that use fire. So right now I run mines on Brawl, and I'm trying to see where I've got them located. Yeah, I'm actually going to pull up my main account because that's where I run Brawl. But let's see, what else did I have written down in my notes? I don't like that the range adjusts depending on the bot. So like, if I put it on the gunner, and which is one of the reasons I put it on Brawl, the range is going to be a lot longer. as compared, because when I first got Fireline, I was advised that I had Astro Train on my team. They told me go ahead and put it on it, but it made it closer. But yeah, so let me go find him on my teams, and I'll give a little bit of a demonstration. The other thing I was thinking about too is when you're using like these fire-based attacks and you're using even getting like a little bit of damage over time. One of the things that concerns me a little bit is the fact that if you got any type of regen, if you've got zone heal cores, if you've got self repair cores, anything like that, that also can make it a little tiny bit less effective. And those are some of the reasons why he dropped it as far as number 4. He actually would probably have been my number 2 pick if those factors were not in place. Alright, so we're going back to the game screen, and I've actually got my 4-star here, level 7. But yeah, that's really good. That's really good damage. In this case, 76% of the bot's DPS. And yeah, let's give him a run. But all right, but yeah, oh, and one of the other positives that I didn't forget to mention, he does shoot over walls, which that makes it really really good as well. And you can see like he melts some stuff down. Even in the 4-star level 7, this stuff is melting down pretty quickly. So as long as you don't get any kind of regen or anything like that, any kind of self repair, it's really gonna do its thing. And so for Brawl, what I like to do is I like to have 2 layers of fire attacks, because I have one at the closer range shooting over the wall, and then I have another one that's trying to do based off of his long distance attack, and it makes everything melt really really quickly. So this is definitely something you want to use in any format. You can use in wars, you can use in raids, and as long as you don't have anything stopping it, like in this particular case I don't have a Titan, so it's not going to have that fire reduction Titan perk, then he's just really going to put that work in. And so that's why I have him in the number 4 spot. And we will go ahead and move on to number 3. Number 3 for me, and this is a newer combat, but number 3 for me is actually Roller Force. And the reason for that is he makes that entire team better. So I'm going to go through my notes and I'm going to look at the list of everything that I said about him. And if you've seen my videos, pretty recent video, you already know that, hey, that's how I feel about him, because it's a lot of positives here, man. I think he has the longest list of positives that I probably wrote in my notes. So good damage. He's got excellent attacking range and ability range. He, if you get something when you're countered, if you're countered by like a slowdown or anything like that, he's gonna speed you up, and so it allows you to kind of even out any kind of slowdown effects. So I'm gonna go ahead back to the game screen. He instantly went on my war team. I was actually a little upset because a lot of people I was talking to when this first started with Roller Force, they were saying, oh man, he's B team material. No, he's certainly A team material, no doubt in my mind. 100% A team material, just because he affects that entire team. His survivability is really good. He equips on, I'm trying to think, I'm not sure if there are any bots that he doesn't equip to. He's just really good, man. He's just really solid, and he makes that entire team better as a result of his special ability. So here I'll use one of my primary moves, the good old RJ Sack. And I've got Roller Force level 10, 4-star on Hook. And my team is just going to kick into overdrive. And this is really good for the current war effects, just because You know, when there is a combiner and one didn't come out on this particular base, but when he does come out, one of the things that happens is he speeds everybody up. And so you can see that green aura right there, that's him just kind of working in the overtime. Now I was kind of just talking to you guys, not really paying attention, so I lost a bunch of bots, but that roller force is still there. So he's got pretty decent survivability. And you can actually see him out there in the back. Now one of the things that does bother me is he can wander off at times if your overall pathing for your team isn't very good, and so that can become a problem, because then you're not getting that additional aura. But yeah, and I'm trying to see if he's going to do it now. He's actually following the team right now, and you can actually see Vertebrate following pretty well along also, so that's helpful. But there are times where if you path a little bit too slowly, then he'll just run away from you. But and he'll just attack some inanimate object. He'll attack alloy storage or something like that. But overall, he's pretty solid, and I really like him a bunch. So that's why he's as high as number 3 on my list. Alright, so let's move on to the last 2 spots. And so here we've got Pterodactyl, which honestly, let's go down the list of all the good things that Pterodactyl does. And honestly, I feel like it gives pretty good damage. I've got the 5-star maxed out on my account, on my main account, and yeah, he does pretty good. He equips to a decent number of bots, and he also works well on any team. I use him in war, raid, offense, defense, however you want to go. And that's one thing I forgot to talk about when I was talking about Roller Force. One of the negatives is he also is not effective on defense. So I forgot to mention that part. But when I look at Pterodactyl and I look at the fact that he is able to heal a particular bot, that becomes valuable to me instantly. And it's 40% damage increase for the 5-star. I'm gonna get out of screen real quick. I'm trying to grab my dog real quick. Hey, you guys, just hold on real quick. I'll be right back. But before I do, let me go ahead and put his abilities up there. And I've got him right now on Colagon. I'll probably just slide Amalgamus over there as well, just to add to the healing factor. Alright, so let's get Colagon onto the team, and we'll just kind of take a look at how Pterodactyl pairs with him. I'll just go ahead and throw him on this same team. And what I'm starting to see is that they're starting to make other bots that are very, very similar to Pterodactyl. I just don't like them quite as much as I do like Pterodactyl. You had Baru, but they just added like a stun effect to him and stuff like that. That's cool, but it's not that the healing is what does it for me. And so when you look at the Pterodactyl ability in action, you can see that it's causing them healing pretty much every time he attacks. So one of the reasons why I put it on Colagon is because now my regular attack is giving me some healing, and then I go run him with Amalgamus, and his special ability also gives me some healing. And it's one of the reasons why when I made the video about him, he was pretty much invincible. He was just, rolling through zone 13, rolling through zone 15, all the way along, which is why I put him and when the combat is actually a really nice addition. Um, and I can't really think of anything negative for him. That's why I'm going to put him in my number 2 spot. And number 1, one of the OG combat bots, it's got to be Crater Maker. And the reason why I say that is Crater Maker is one of those combat bots. He changed the entire meta. He changed the way that we actually play the game when he came out. And so if you guys weren't around when we first got combat bots, one of the things that happened was, everybody was using multiple gunners because they wanted to make walk teams and everything like that. And the air class bots weren't being used quite as much. And so then we got Crater Maker, and that first weekend everybody started getting Crater Maker, and they said, hey, why don't you add this to a jet? The jets already have high damage on the ground, and then you add Crater Maker to it, and then it becomes something that is really, really usable, because now you can have multiple bots shoot over walls. And this is during the time period where we had honeycomb bases, and walls were really, really relevant. But even when walls became less relevant, it still never went away, because if you did run into anywhere with a wall, you now had a ranged attacker that you could use everywhere. So for me, I actually use, on my live account, I actually have the 5-star. I finally got the 5-star after chasing them. I had to go through the entire batch to get them. But on the test account, I'm rocking with the 4-star. And so good damage for each rocket. 5 different rockets. You essentially change them into, you're changing your bot into onslaught, and you can use multiple of these. I mean, to the point where you can even use 2 stars in like Prime League Wars. And so I think that adds a lot of value to your teams. It can be a little slow sometimes trying to get all your damage in, but it equips on many bots. It's got good attack power, and it covers a area, and so that makes it really good for use in your Prime League Wars. Which right now I got one of my playtester buddies up here in the war, and you can actually see that on display. Alright, so here I actually got Crater Maker used several different times. I've got him on Blast Off, I've got him on Cutthroat, and you can kind of see that the team chemistry is definitely there, because they just give you good range. You can keep your bots back, and in this particular case I got stunned because I was just kind of being reckless, just kind of talking. But after you get rid of that shock tower, all of these guys are just going to start shooting from distance. He works really well on defense. I see a lot of junners on defense at times, just so they kind of stay away from the action, and it makes it very, very difficult to get to some of those outpost bots if they happen to be hiding out behind walls somewhere. And I also moved some of my power cores around, so I got some of my bots in a little bit of trouble there. Lost sound wave, but it's all good. I'm just really trying to demonstrate how Crater Maker just gets back there at distance. But yeah, so that's really what I was looking at, man. That's my top 10 for my combat bots. Let me know what you think about it, man. Like I know some guys up there that are really, really well loved, that I didn't add on the list. Had my reasons for each one of those, but yeah, man, this is primarily what I use, and this is what I feel like is really good for the game. So let me know what you think about it. As always, if you like the content, go ahead and give it a like. If you're not a subscriber, go ahead and subscribe, so that way you never have to miss any of my content. And typically I'm doing stuff, I do one video on either Monday or Tuesday, and I do the other one typically on Wednesday. It's usually a longer one on Wednesday. But I think this week what I'm going to do is, because we got a different type of event, we got a raid event, hadn't had one of those in years, and so I'm actually going to come on Friday and just talk about my raid event strategy. And I'm gonna try to do this pretty early in the morning when the event first starts. So look forward to seeing that on Friday, and I'll look forward to seeing you guys on the battlefield. Freezy us out.